Hello, I'm Reverend Ruth Van Lillian. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of the Emerald Coast. We are a covenantal community founded on loving kindness and a common devotion to our free faith. We recognize all the earth as sacred ground, and we welcome each other into this virtual space. We especially welcome those visiting with us today. We are so glad you are here. We invite you to check our website and Facebook page to learn more about us. We hope to touch hearts, teach minds, challenge spirits, and comfort souls. May you find refreshment and restoration in our service today.
Each morning we must hold out the chalice of our being to receive, to carry, and give back. Dag Hammarskjöld.
Gather the Spirit, harvest the palm, our separate fires will kindle one flame. Witness the mystery of this vow, our trials in this light appear all the same. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then. Gather in hope, compassion and strength, gather to celebrate once again. Gather the Spirit growing in all, drawn from the moon and fed by the sun. Winter to spring and summer to fall, a chorus of life resounding as one. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then. Gather in hope, compassion and strength, gather to celebrate once again. dost thou burn, as separate fires will kindle one flame. Witness the mystery of this world, our trials in this light appear all the same. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then. Gather in hope, compassion and strength, gather to celebrate once again. Gather the Spirit growing in all, drawn from the moon and fed by the sun. Winter to spring and summer to fall, a chorus of life resounding as one. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then. Gather in hope, compassion and strength, gather to celebrate once again.
Good morning. I don't think I've been here in a while on a Sunday morning telling you a story. So this morning, it's not really a story. Reverend Ruth is going to talk about one of our sources in the Unitarian Universalist faith, and that's Words and Deeds of Prophetic People, which challenges us to confront powers and structures of evil with justice, compassion, and the transforming power of love. So that sounds like a really big thing, but what it really means is there were people who came before us who taught us some things about how to live together and how to be better people. So I'm going to introduce you to some prophetic people in my life. And here they are. This is my mom and dad a long time ago, I think probably before I was even born. But they are people who taught me an awful lot of things about life and about how to be a better person. So here are some of the things that they taught me. And they said these things all the time, and some of them you will probably recognize. Always make sure you're wearing clean underwear when you go out, in case you're in an accident, you know, and you have to go to the hospital. Anyway, that may not be such a big thing about faith. It's just kind of common sense. So here's the next thing. My father used to say this all the time. You're going to give your mother apoplexy. And probably he said this when we were trying to get the swings to go high enough to jump over the neighbor's fence or something like that. And truthfully, I didn't know what apoplexy was for a really long time. But he used to say that all the time, and it's probably a good thing to live by. You know, don't do something that would give your mother apoplexy. My mother always said, put on a sweater, I'm cold. I know you've heard that one before. My father, this was like his favorite thing when we'd be talking about stuff. And we kind of guess about why things were some way. And he would say, we never guess, we look it up. And I can't tell you how many times somebody would have to get up from the dinner table and go downstairs and get the Encyclopedia Britannica, because we didn't have Google back then, and look something up to make sure we were right. And this was my mother's favorite expression. And we still say it to each other, all of us kids, when we get together. If you can't say something nice about someone, don't say anything at all. So what do these things teach us about living in the world and about being a better person? First of all, think about how your words and actions affect others. Don't do things that give your mother apoplexy. By the way, apoplexy is an old word for having a stroke, so I did find out what it was. Notice that not everyone is feeling the same thing as you are. You may be warm, other people may be cold. You may feel perfectly safe, and other people are afraid. You should notice that. Be sure of your facts before you open your mouth. Every time something comes up about false facts or fake news or something, I can hear my father's voice in the background saying this. And finally, be kind. Don't spread malicious rumors. Don't say bad things about people. Try to be kind and try to be nice. And that's what the prophetic people in my life taught me. I hope you had some prophetic people in your life who also taught you some things about how to live and how to be a better person in your life.
Friends, as we consider the joys and the concerns of our community, let us spend a few moments in silence, and I'll close us with some words by James Baldwin. Love takes off the masks that we fear we cannot live without, and know we cannot live within. I use the word love here not merely in the personal sense, but as a state of being or a state of grace. Not in the infantile American sense of being made happy, but in the tough and universal sense of quest and daring and growth. Amen. Shalom. Blessed be.
From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and by this we live. From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and by this we live.
Our fellowship and our community need our financial support. If you're a member or friend, old or new, you can send in your pledge or other contribution by check or online at uufec.com. We also have a tradition that we call Share the Plate. When we're in person at church, the collection plate offering is split between the fellowship and a local charity. During these times of COVID, we're doing the same thing with online donations. They will be split between the fellowship and, for February, a new charity that we're supporting called Youth Village of Fort Walton Beach. Youth Village is a nonprofit childcare center for children ages 3 to 14. They also provide preschool for ages 3 to 5, a before and after school program for kids in kindergarten through 8th grade, and a summer program. They strive to help children acquire a love of learning. Thank you for your generosity.
Coretta Scott King stood before me, an imposing presence wrapped in a shimmering fuchsia sari, at the special opening of the movie Gandhi in 1983. I held on to my father's arm, and at age 16, I was appropriately awestruck to be shaking hands with one of the most influential leaders of the American civil rights movement, the widow of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. My father had worked with her iconic husband years earlier during those pivotal days when the movement came to Birmingham, and my father functioned as a mediator to help desegregate the business district and transform the oppressive system of city government. While most famous as the widow of the civil rights leader, King was a leader in her own right, and she took on leadership of the movement after her husband's assassination. She eventually broadened her focus to include women's rights, LGBT rights, economic issues, world peace, and various other causes. As early as December of 1968, she called for women to unite and form a solid block of woman power to fight the three great evils of racism, poverty, and war during a solidarity speech. And on April 27th, 1968, King spoke at an anti-war demonstration in Central Park in place of her husband. King made it clear that there was no reason why a nation as rich as ours should be blighted by disease, poverty, and illiteracy. It was out of her continued devotion to the practice of nonviolence, according to the teachings of Mahatma Gandhi, that she had been invited to that special event the evening that I shook her hand. It is a transformative experience to read, listen to, and witness the words and deeds of prophetic people, which challenge us to confront powers and structures of evil with justice, compassion, and the transforming power of love. This is one of the 6 sources of our Unitarian Universalist living tradition. In my own ecumenical and interfaith upbringing, influenced by the religious movements of Methodist, Episcopalian, Roman Catholic, Jewish, Christian Science, and Unitarian Universalist, I lived and breathed this stuff. I grew up with such powerful ideas ringing in my ears. A prophet is not, as Hollywood might have us believe, a predictor of future events armed with a crystal ball. A true prophet is not a foreteller, but a forthteller, a declarer of truth, and a confronter of systems which obscure the truth. A prophet tells the truth and calls us to pay attention and to be transformed by that truth. Think of the prophets you have encountered. You read their stories, their poetry. You heard them preach and sing and teach. You knew them or knew of them, and their truth still rings in your ears. Their prophecy still stirs your mind, your heart. And every day we encounter new prophets on television, radio, Facebook, Zoom, Twitter, TikTok, Discord, Instagram, and so many others. Sometimes we are lucky to meet them face to face and listen spellbound to their wisdom and passion as they call for justice and freedom. In his book, Prophetic Encounters, Unitarian Universalist historian and Harvard Divinity School professor Dan McCannon recounts the stories of the prophets and leaders of the American radical tradition, from the fight to abolish slavery all the way to the ongoing struggles for human equality in the face of racism, sexism, heterosexism, and classism in the early 21st century. There have always been American radicals, says McCannon, who have drawn strength from their diverse faiths to forget our predecessors' work is to lose their wisdom and inspiration. The American radical tradition is the path of the prophets. It is the tradition of abolitionists who called on their neighbors to immediately renounce the sin of slavery, a feminist who recognized patriarchy as itself a form of slavery, of socialists who labored to build a cooperative commonwealth, and of pacifists who saw war as the ultimate affront to humanity. McCannon continues to emphasize that it is in our common human connection that the radical movement emerges and prophets come forward. When human beings encounter one another deeply, in the midst of their struggles for freedom and equality and community, prophetic power is unleashed. This is both the power to denounce injustice and evil and the power to announce the coming transformation of the world. In the biblical words, to proclaim God's kingdom that will be realized on earth, or in UU parlance, the beloved community of black and white and brown all together. At the core of the lives and the work of the modern-day prophets is the vision and the call for a new transformed world where there is abundant space for everyone. In 1993, I drove with two other clergy sisters in my little Ford Escort all the way from Birmingham to Minneapolis in early November to the infamous Reimagining Conference to join with 2,200 other persons, mostly women, from all over the world to push back at patriarchal oppression in the Christian tradition and to reimagine our faith in ways that would welcome women's full participation and recognize women's current and historical contributions. We worshiped together, renaming the deity as Sophia in the Jewish wisdom tradition. We sang pagan-themed hymns and used feminine pronouns for the divine. We took Holy Communion together, not with bread and wine, but with milk and honey. One of the speakers questioned the need for Jesus to go to the cross to atone for sins and reimagined salvation as a communal act. The whole human race is saved together. It never occurred to me that 6 months later, the day after I was ordained, my male colleagues would turn on me and the other women who attended the conference and publicly shame and censure us for our attendance at the dangerous and heretical event. As I look back at what became a pivotal time in my early ministerial formation, I remember so clearly my encounter with a prophet at that conference, a keynote speaker on the second day. I looked toward the podium where a beautiful, powerful African-American woman stood up, and as a hush fell, she began to sing. My God is a rock in a weary land, a weary land, a weary land. My God is a rock in a weary land, a shelter in the time of storm. I was mesmerized. Bernice Johnson Reagan, PhD, was an original member of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee Freedom Singers, a curator of the National Museum of American History at the Smithsonian, and a founding member of the Black women's a cappella ensemble Sweet Honey in the Rock. She had dedicated her life for the cause of racial freedom and justice and to the empowerment of women. Oh, she sang a while and preached a while about the suffering and strength, about keeping on and moving forward. She declared, "We'll stand the storm. It won't be long. We'll anchor by and by. The storm is the only way I know what an anchor is." She called us to remember who we were and our commitment to use our gifts in service to humankind. I was encouraged, emboldened, energized. Here was a prophet in the flesh declaring her truth, our truth, to us and the world. I wanted to preach like she did, with passion, confidence, and song. My God is a rock in a weary land, a shelter in the time of storm. With so many communication venues at our fingertips these days, we are rather spoiled for choice to encounter modern-day prophets. Every day on Facebook, my UU colleagues share with me words, songs, videos of such a prophetic nature. So many of our Unitarian Universalist clergy and lay leaders are finding their bold, impassioned, prophetic voices and declaring their truth to multiple audiences. My colleague, Reverend Adam Lawrence Dyer, is the lead minister at the Unitarian Universalist First Parish in Cambridge. He is a graduate of Princeton University and the Pacific School of Religion in Berkeley, California. As an African American UU minister, he pursues his prophetic role in the church with passionate intention. Recently, he published an essay entitled Liberation Universalism, in which he addressed the importance of developing a black theology which is built on the foundation of blackness as elemental to human dignity, not peripheral, not in reaction to the ongoing influence of white supremacy and European colonialism. Ultimately, Dyer writes, Black Unitarian Universalists will have many expressions of their faith. I'm convinced that if the name Unitarian Universalist is going to remain a part of Black UU identity, both blackness and Unitarian Universalism must be challenged and deeply interrogated and put through a rigorous theological exploration. They must also be intentionally woven together in thoughtful and thought-provoking ways. Being black and UU cannot just be about white supremacy, nor is black UU identity solely a question of surviving anti-blackness. Black UU theology is a question of black affirmation, origins, faith, history, empowerment, and it is categorically unique to the experience and need of people of African descent. It is not to say that Black UU is better, but Black UU theology must be different. It is needed to carve out places of self-understanding that will allow us to grow and thrive within all UU communities. It is time for us to claim a uniquely Black Unitarian Universalist theological home. We are surrounded by prophets. There are Latinx UUs calling for recognition and justice for immigrants coming in at our southern borders. There are advocates for differently abled UUs to have access and inclusion in our congregations. There are gender non-binary UUs risking themselves every day to help us all expand our understanding and welcome of the spectrum of human sexual identity. There are same-sex couples exercising their right to the blessings, benefits, and challenges of marriage in both religious and secular arenas. There are UU activists reminding us that whatever happens to the earth happens to us, and the burden of environmental destruction will fall on the poorest and the most vulnerable first. Wherever there is injustice in the world, there will be prophets calling it out and crying out for change, for liberation from oppression, for transformation of every human system. Each of us will find ourselves in the position to exercise our own prophetic voice on occasion. We will find ourselves in a situation where injustice is before us, and we will recognize it, and then we will have a choice to make. Do we call it out? Or do we keep silence and thereby become uncomfortable participants in the injustice? Sometimes the path will be clear and the risk will seem minimal. Other times, we may face serious consequences. We are not angels, my friends, only human beings. We will not always get it right. We will not always recognize what is in front of us, and we will not always find our voice in time. But we can strive toward greater involvement in the work of justice and liberation from oppression. We can listen to those powerful prophetic voices all around us, and we can apply their call to our lives and find ways to participate in the transformation of the world. May we all claim our opportunity to be a rock in a weary world and to offer shelter in the time of storm. Let the prophetic voice ringing in our ears call us to live out our Unitarian Universalist vision of justice, equity, and compassion across the world. Amen. Shalom. Blessed be.
Over my head, I hear music in the air. Over my head, I hear music in the air. Over my head, I hear music in the air. There must be a God somewhere. Over my head, I hear singing in the air. Over my head, I hear singing in the air. Over my head, I hear singing in the air. I see trouble in the air. Over my head, I see trouble in the air. Over my head, I see trouble in the air. There must be a God somewhere.
Wish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
When we can truly celebrate the diversity of contributions and talents offered by all people, we shall overcome hatred and prejudice and oppression. When we can truly extend our hands to one another in loving acceptance, we shall overcome the past that haunts us now. Living in peace and freedom, we shall overcome the wrongs that have happened and the debts unpaid. Let us join together in that commitment to overcome. Let us say together, Amen.
Siblings and kindred, may the prophetic words ring in our ears, calling us to be leaders in the transformation of the world. Let us go in peace. Amen. Shalom. Blessed be.